You follow every recipe step by step, but something still feels off by the time the dish hits the table. Chinese cooks have relied on small technique fixes for generations, the kind that never make it into a written recipe. Today you are counting down 31 clever cooking tricks that will completely change how you cook. Stay close, because the tricks near the end are the ones that separate a good cook from a great one. 31. Season a new wok before its very first use. A brand new wok straight from the store still carries a thin factory coating that ruins the first several meals cooked in it. Scrub the wok with hot water and a stiff brush to remove that coating completely, then dry it fully over low heat for 2 minutes. Coat the entire interior surface with 1 tablespoon oil, heating it until it just begins to smoke. Then wipe away the excess with a paper towel. This process builds a thin polymerized layer through repeated oxidation, the same natural non-stick surface that seasoned woks are known for. Grandmothers across Guangdong province season every new wok this exact way before it ever touches real food, treating the ritual as essential as the cooking itself. What comes out the other side is a wok that is smooth, dark, and ready to cook without sticking. 30. Use cold water to start a stock. Instead of hot dropping bones straight into boiling water traps, impurities inside instead of drawing them out. Start with bones or meat fully submerged in cold water. Then bring the pot up to a gentle simmer slowly over medium heat. Starting cold allows proteins and impurities to release gradually as the water warms, rather than seizing shut the moment they hit sudden high heat. Home cooks across Sichuan province always start their broths from cold water, insisting it is the difference between a cloudy stock and a clear one. What simmers in that pot for hours afterward is a broth that turns out clear, clean, and deeply flavorful. 29. Add salt to boiling water. Only after it reaches a full boil. Adding salt to water before it boils can actually slow down how quickly the pot reaches a full rolling boil. Wait until the water is fully bubbling before stirring in 1 tablespoon salt per 4 cups of water, just before dropping in noodles or dumplings. Dissolved salt raises the water's boiling point slightly, meaning water with salt added too early takes marginally longer to reach that active boil. Street vendors across Guangzhou always salt their pots at this exact stage, keeping their boiling stations moving fast during busy service. What drops into that water afterward cooks fast, evenly, and seasoned from the very first bite. Stick around, because number 25 reveals the oldest trick in the book for knowing when oil is truly ready for deep frying. No thermometer required. 28. Rest meat before cutting it to keep juices locked. In slicing into meat, the moment it comes off, the heat sends all its juices running straight onto the cutting board. Let cooked meat rest untouched for 5 minutes before cutting into it, tenting it loosely with foil to keep it warm. Muscle fibers contract tightly under high heat, pushing juices toward the center, and resting allows those fibers to relax and reabsorb moisture evenly throughout. Grandmothers across Fujian province always build this rest into their timing, refusing to cut into meat straight off the pan. What ends up on the plate is meat that stays juicy, tender, and full of flavor in every slice. 27. Use a bamboo steamer instead of a metal one for texture. Metal steamers trap condensation that drips straight back down onto whatever is cooking inside. Switch to a bamboo steamer basket instead, lining it with parchment paper before adding dumplings or buns on top. Bamboo's porous, natural fibers absorb excess moisture during steaming, rather than letting water droplets collect and fall back onto the food below. Home cooks across Guangzhou have used bamboo steamers for generations, insisting nothing else gives dumplings the same texture. What comes out of that basket is food that turns out light, dry, and never soggy on the bottom. 26. Add oil to the pan before it heats up, not after. Pouring oil into an already blazing hot pan often causes it to smoke and burn before food ever touches the surface. Add your oil to the pan while it is still cold. Then, let both the pan and oil heat up together over medium-high heat for 2 minutes. Heating oil gradually alongside the pan allows it to reach an even, stable temperature throughout, rather than scorching unevenly against sudden extreme heat. Home cooks across Sichuan province follow this exact order without exception, treating it as one of the earliest lessons in wok cooking. What results is oil that heats evenly, smooth, and never burns before the food even goes in. 25. Use chopsticks to test if oil is ready for deep frying. Guessing at oil temperature without a thermometer leaves too much room for soggy, undercooked frying results. Dip the tip of a dry wooden chopstick into the oil and watch closely for a steady stream of small bubbles forming around the wood. Street vendors across Chengdu have tested oil this exact way for generations, relying on decades of practice rather than any gadget. Trapped gases inside the wood grain release as visible bubbles once oil reaches roughly 350 degrees, the ideal frying temperature. What comes out of that oil afterward is food that fries up golden, crisp, and never greasy. 24. Toast spices. Before grinding them for stronger flavor, pre-ground spices pulled straight from a jar often taste dull compared to freshly prepared ones. Toast. Whole spices like Sichuan peppercorns or star anise in a dry pan over medium heat for 90 seconds until fragrant, then grind them while still warm. Heat releases the essential oils trapped inside whole spices far more effectively than grinding alone ever could on its own. Grandmothers across Sichuan province toast their spices this exact way before every single batch of chili oil or 5-spice blend. What comes off the grinder afterward is spice that smells sharp, fragrant, and far more potent than anything pre-ground. If you have made it this far, hit that subscribe button, because number 19 is a splash of something most people only reach for at the bar, and it completely transforms a stir-fry. 23. Use cold butter or lard for flakier pastry dough. Warm fat blends too smoothly into flour, leaving pastry dense instead of light and flaky. Cut cold butter or lard straight from the fridge into small cubes, working it into the flour quickly with your fingertips until pea-sized clumps form. Cold fat stays solid long enough to create tiny pockets throughout the dough, and those pockets melt during baking to release steam that separates the layers. Home cooks across Shanghai keep their fat chilled until the very last moment before mixing, insisting warm hands alone can ruin a batch. What comes out of the oven afterward is pastry that turns out flaky, light, and layered. 22. Add acid at the end of cooking to brighten a dish. A rich, heavy dish can taste flat and one-dimensional without something to lift it at the very end. Stir in 1 teaspoon rice vinegar or a squeeze of lime during the final 30 seconds of cooking, off direct heat, tasting as you go. Acid interacts directly with fat and salt on the palate, cutting through heaviness and making every other flavor taste sharper by contrast. Grandmothers across Yunnan province finish nearly every braise or stir-fry with this exact splash, treating it as the final signature touch. What changes instantly is a dish that tastes bright, balanced, and far more alive. 21. Use a mortar and pestle instead of a blender for pastes. A blender liquefies aromatics into a thin puree instead of a proper paste, losing texture that matters in the final dish. Crush garlic, ginger, and chilies together in a mortar and pestle using a firm pounding and twisting motion for 2 full minutes. Grandmothers across Sichuan province still reach for a mortar and pestle over any electric blender, insisting the texture cannot be replicated by machine. Pounding ruptures plant cell walls unevenly compared to blending, releasing aromatic oils gradually rather than diluting them with excess liquid. What comes out afterward is a paste that is coarse, fragrant, and far more concentrated than anything blended. 20. Let dough rest before rolling to prevent shrinking. Back. Rolled out dough that keeps springing back into a smaller shape makes shaping dumplings or noodles feel impossible. Cover the dough with a damp cloth and let it rest for 20 minutes at room temperature before attempting to roll it out again. Gluten strands tighten up during kneading, and that resting period allows them to relax fully, making the dough far easier to stretch. Home cooks across Shandong province always build this rest into their dumpling prep, never skipping straight from kneading to rolling. What rolls out afterward is dough that stretches smooth, thin, and holds its shape. 19. Use a splash of alcohol to lift stuck browned bits. Browned bits stuck to the bottom of a hot pan carry some of the most concentrated flavor in the whole dish, yet most people scrape right past them. Pour 1 tablespoon Shaoxing wine directly onto the hot pan, scraping gently with a spatula to lift every browned bit into the sauce. Street vendors across Shanghai treat this splash as an essential step in nearly every braise or stir-fry they serve. The wine's alcohol content dissolves fond, the flavorful residue clinging to the pan's surface, releasing it back into the dish. What results is a sauce that tastes deeply savory, layered, and rich. Stay with me, because number 14 is a step almost every home cook skips before braising meat, and it changes the final broth completely. 18. Score meat or fish before marinating for deeper flavor. A marinade often sits on the surface of meat or fish without ever soaking in past the outer layer. Cut shallow diagonal slashes about 1/4 inch deep across the surface before adding your marinade, letting it rest for 20 minutes. Grandmothers across Fujian province score their fish this exact way before steaming, insisting the cuts help seasoning travel far deeper than the surface alone. Those small cuts increase the surface area exposed to the marinade, allowing flavor compounds to penetrate far past the outer layer. What comes off the heat afterward is meat that tastes seasoned, tender, and flavorful all the way through. 17. Use room temperature eggs for better baking. Results: eggs pulled straight from the fridge can cause butter and sugar mixtures to seize and separate during baking. Set eggs out on the counter for 30 minutes before baking, or submerge them in warm water for 5 minutes if you are short on time. Cold ingredients disrupt the emulsion forming between fat and liquid, and that broken emulsion leads directly to a dense, uneven texture in the final bake. Home cooks across Shanghai always plan their baking around this exact step, pulling eggs out well before they start mixing. What comes out of the oven afterward is a bake that turns out light, even, and perfectly risen. 16. Salt eggplant. Before cooking to draw out bitterness. Eggplant can taste bitter and soak up an unreasonable amount of oil if it goes straight into the pan raw. Slice the eggplant and sprinkle both sides with 1 teaspoon salt, letting it sit for 20 minutes before patting dry with a paper towel. Salt draws bitter compounds out of the eggplant's flesh through osmosis, pulling moisture and bitterness to the surface at the same time. Grandmothers across Sichuan province salt their eggplant this exact way before every braise, insisting the step is never optional. What lands in the pan afterward is eggplant that cooks up tender, mellow, and never bitter. 15. Use a damp cloth under a cutting board to stop slipping. A cutting board sliding across the counter turns basic chopping into a genuinely dangerous task. Fold a damp kitchen towel flat on the counter, then set the cutting board directly on top before you start slicing anything. Home cooks across Guangdong secure their boards this exact way before any fast-paced knife work with a heavy cleaver. Friction between damp cloth and countertop increases dramatically compared to a dry board resting on bare stone or laminate. What holds steady afterward is a board that stays fixed, stable, and safe through every single cut. 14. Blanch meat. Briefly. Before braising to remove impurities. Meat dropped straight into a braise often clouds the broth with grayish foam and impurities as it cooks. Submerge meat in cold water, bring it to a boil for 2 minutes, then drain and rinse it clean under cold water before braising. Street vendors across Chengdu blanch every cut this exact way before it ever touches their braising pot, treating it as a mandatory first step. That brief boil coagulates surface proteins and releases trapped blood and impurities, which then rinse away completely. What simmers in the braise afterward is a broth that turns out clear, clean, and deeply flavorful. You are almost halfway through this list, so drop a comment telling me which trick has surprised you the most, because number 9 speeds up bread baking in a way most people have never tried. 13. Use the back of a knife to tenderize meat before cooking. Tough cuts of meat can turn out chewy, no matter how long they marinate beforehand. Pound the meat's surface repeatedly with the flat back of a heavy knife, working across the entire cut for about 1 minute before seasoning. Grandmothers across Guangdong province tenderize their meat this exact way before nearly every stir-fry, relying on the technique instead of expensive cuts. That repeated pounding physically breaks down tough muscle fibers, loosening the structure that normally makes meat feel chewy. What lands in the pan afterward is meat that turns out tender, soft, and easy to bite through. 12. Add sugar to balance. A dish that tastes too salty. An oversalted dish can feel impossible to fix once the seasoning has already gone in heavy-handed. Stir in half a teaspoon sugar at a time, tasting after each addition, until the sharp saltiness mellows into something more balanced. Sugar interacts with the same taste receptors that detect salt, and that overlap softens the perception of excess salt without actually removing it. Home cooks across Fujian province keep sugar within reach for this exact fix, treating it as their go-to rescue for an over-seasoned pot. What comes out the other side is a dish that tastes balanced, rounded, and no longer harsh. 11. Use a lid slightly. A jar to control a simmer. A fully covered pot can boil over fast, while a fully uncovered one loses heat and moisture too quickly. Prop your lid at a slight angle, covering about 3/4 of the pot, and let it simmer steadily on medium-low heat. Home cooks across Jiangsu province use this exact tilt method for long braises, insisting it holds a gentler simmer than any lid position alone. Partial coverage allows steam to escape gradually, preventing the pressure buildup that causes a full boil to erupt over the rim. What simmers underneath afterward is a pot that stays steady, controlled, and never boils over. 10. Rinse rice until the water runs clear. Before cooking, rice straight from the bag carries a heavy coating of surface starch that makes the final pot gummy and clumped. Rinse the rice in a bowl under cold running water, swirling it gently with your hand until the water runs mostly clear after about 4 rinses. Grandmothers across Guangdong province rinse their rice this exact way before every single meal, never skipping straight to the pot. Washing away that loose surface starch prevents excess gelatinization during cooking, which is exactly what causes rice to clump together. What cooks up afterward is rice that turns out fluffy, separate, and light. 9. Use warm water instead of cold to activate yeast faster. Cold water can leave yeast sluggish, stretching out proofing time by an hour or more. Dissolve your yeast in water heated to about 110 degrees, stirring gently, and letting it sit for 5 minutes until it turns foamy. Warmth speeds up the metabolic activity inside yeast cells significantly, allowing fermentation to begin far faster than it would in cold or lukewarm water. Home cooks across Shandong province warm their water this exact way before making steamed buns, never leaving proofing time to chance. What rises afterward is dough that turns out light, airy, and ready well ahead of schedule. If you have made it this far, hit that like button, because number 3 is the final finishing touch that separates a good soup from a truly memorable one. 8. Add a splash of milk to reduce spiciness in a dish. A dish gone too spicy can feel impossible to fix once the chilies are already fully cooked in. Stir in 2 tablespoons milk or coconut milk at a time, tasting after each addition until the heat mellows to something more comfortable. Capsaicin, the compound responsible for spicy heat, is fat-soluble rather than water-soluble, meaning dairy fat binds to it far more effectively than water ever could. Street vendors across Sichuan province keep milk on hand for exactly this reason, rescuing dishes that came out hotter than intended. What comes out the other side is a dish that tastes balanced, smooth, and far more approachable. 7. Use a splash of water to loosen a sauce that broke. A sauce that has split into an oily, separated mess can feel completely ruined once it happens. Whisk in 1 tablespoon warm water at a time over low heat, stirring constantly until the sauce comes back together into a smooth consistency. Home cooks across Fujian province rely on this exact fix whenever a sauce breaks during a busy dinner service, refusing to start over from scratch. Water helps re-emulsify the separated fat and liquid, restoring the suspended structure that gives sauce its smooth texture. What comes together afterward is a sauce that turns glossy, smooth, and fully restored. 6. Toast. Rice or noodles. Dry before adding liquid. Rice or noodles dropped straight into liquid often cook up bland and stick together in clumps. Toast the dry rice or noodles in a hot pan for 2 minutes, stirring constantly before adding any water or broth at all. Grandmothers across Sichuan province toast their rice this exact way before nearly every clay pot dish, insisting the step builds flavor no other method can replicate. Dry heat triggers the Maillard reaction on the outer starch layer, developing a nutty depth that plain boiling alone cannot create. What cooks up afterward is rice that turns out fragrant, separate, and deeply flavorful. 5. Use the back of a spoon to test sauce. Consistency. Guessing whether a sauce has thickened enough often means undercooking or overcooking it past the point of no return. Dip the back of a spoon into the sauce, then run 1 finger down the center, checking whether the line holds its shape or fills back in. Home cooks across Guangdong test their sauces this exact way before pulling anything off the heat, relying on decades of practice over any gadget. A line that holds steady signals the sauce has reached proper viscosity through sufficient reduction and thickening. What comes off the stove afterward is a sauce that turns out glossy, thick, and perfectly clinging. 4. Cover dough. With a damp cloth to keep it from drying out. Dough left uncovered on the counter forms a dry, crusty skin within just a few minutes. Drape a damp kitchen towel loosely over the dough anytime it is resting, keeping the cloth from touching the surface directly. Grandmothers across Shandong province cover every batch of dumpling or bun dough this exact way, never leaving it exposed even briefly. That thin layer of moisture in the cloth prevents surface evaporation, protecting the dough's exterior from drying and cracking. What rolls out afterward is dough that stays smooth, soft, and easy to shape. You are almost to the very end, so stay through the final hack because it is the one trick that ties this entire list together. 3. Add fat at the end of a soup for a richer finish. A soup simmered for hours can still taste thin and watery without the right finishing touch. Stir in 1 tablespoon rendered chicken fat or a drizzle of sesame oil during the final minute, off direct heat right before serving. Street vendors across Guangzhou finish nearly every bowl this exact way, treating the final fat as the true signature of a good broth. Fat carries and amplifies flavor compounds far more effectively than water alone, coating the palate and rounding out the whole dish. What lands in the bowl afterward is a soup that tastes rich, silky, and deeply satisfying. 2. Use a splash of cold water to stop pasta or noodles from boiling over. A pot of boiling noodles can foam up and spill across the stovetop within seconds of turning your back. Pour 2 tablespoons cold water directly into the pot the moment foam starts climbing toward the rim. Home cooks across Fujian province keep a cup of cold water beside every simmering pot for exactly this reason during busy meal prep. The sudden temperature drop collapses the surface tension, holding those foam bubbles together, settling the boil almost instantly. What calms down afterward is a pot that simmers steady, controlled, and mess-free. 1. The mise en place habit that changes how you cook everything. This is the trick that changes everything. The one habit that ties every single lesson on this list into a single practice. Most people think good cooking comes down to skill alone, but that mindset misses the most powerful hack of all. Chinese kitchens, from home cooks to street vendors, every single ingredient completely before the heat ever goes on. Measuring, chopping, and arranging everything within arm's reach before cooking begins. Slice your vegetables, measure your sauces into small bowls, and mince your aromatics all in advance, laying everything out in the order it will hit the pan. Stir fry and wok. Cooking move fast, often within a 2 or 3 minute window, and any pause to chop or measure mid-cook risks scorching ingredients that need constant motion. Grandmothers and street vendors across Guangdong province treat this prep stage as more important than the cooking itself, insisting a disorganized station is where every mistake begins. What comes off the stove once this habit is locked in is food that turns out timed, controlled, and consistently better than anything rushed together on the fly. Bonus tip: the instant kitchen reset. As a reward for staying until the very end, here is one more trick that pulls everything together. Before starting any dish, take 30 seconds to clear your cutting board and wipe down your workspace, giving yourself a clean surface to build on. Home cooks across Sichuan province treat this quick reset as part of mise en place itself, never starting a new step on a cluttered board. A clear station means every ingredient has a visible place, cutting down on the small mistakes that come from reaching past clutter mid-cook. What this quick habit gives you is a kitchen that stays organized, efficient, and ready for whatever comes next. And that's exactly why we make these videos for you, one small habit at a time, so your kitchen finally works the way it should. If this helped, hit like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you never miss the next one, because more tricks like these are on the way every single week. Coming up, we are diving into 33 clever Chinese knife skills that speed up every prep session, plus a deep dive into the hidden science behind Chinese sauce, making traditions passed down through generations. Stay sharp, stay resourceful, and keep cooking like it matters, because the smallest habits are usually the ones that change everything. Drop a comment below telling us which trick on this list you are trying first and which one surprised you the most.